You're listening to Terry Talks, where we discuss all things taboo, uncovering art industry nonsense, grounding you in confidence and leadership to run an arts business with unwavering power and grit. Hi, Celeste. I want to thank you for sitting with us on the virtual Terry Talks couch and taking some time out to be with us today and to be our expert in branding today. I share with everybody like what you've been working on, what you have your hands in, what creative projects you're working on. I know you're deep into a lot of client work because I saw your Instagram like a couple days ago or last week, and you were like, I haven't been on here. I've been knee deep in my computer. So share a little bit about it to the people who don't know you.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Celeste, and I'm the founder, creative director for Sainte Noire. We are a design business, but I also like to categorize us in the creative house industry because we do everything that you can think of for businesses, not just branding. So, yeah, we do have a lot going on right now. And something that I really love is that we don't have a specific industry we work with. So, our clients are across industries. So when we have a lot of projects going on, like what we do right now, from podcast launches, launching merch and clothing lines, launching new brands, photography brands, educational brands, beauty, fashion, etc. We're working across industries, and it's really fun, but it makes you expand your thinking a little bit to go from niche to niche and industry to industry. But it's really it allows us to push ourselves creatively, and I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly.
It's like one big party of creatives. I mean,
Yeah.
like you're just like talking about cool shit and design stuff like all day. I mean, I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, and I'm a basic designer, you know, in terms of my own content, but like I love that design shit, and I get so like way too involved in like just be a post, and I'm like, oh god, I'm too deep in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Canva's got those good templates, you know, and it's just like it's a rabbit hole sometimes of like things. But
Yeah.
you know, the reason I wanted to bring you on today is because there are so many myths, stereotypes, feelings around whether an artist can call themselves a brand. And here's my, I'm not going to say my take on it, but here are the sort of the stereotypical thoughts, right? In order to be a brand, you need a logo, you need colors, a color scheme, right? A colorway. You need to have a font. You need to have a product. That's another thing. You have to have like a physical product. And I can say that like a lot of artists are anti that because it then can feel corporate-y. And then it goes into like this like stiff place where it's like, I'm not a brand designer. Like I'm not going to do all that shit.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I've also noticed that backfiring because the level of, you know, professionalism or just the syncing of all of the things really can get confusing and can be looked at as messy or not serious enough. And so I'd love to hear your perspective around just what branding looks like. What is the kind of the end goal of having a brand in like a very broad sense? And then we'll go into like how an artist can leverage, like
Yeah.
really just being one with the word brand.
Yeah, yeah. And so I don't think I mentioned this a minute ago, but even though we work across industries, we specialize in working with artists and creatives and founders. So that is the main category of people that we specialize in working with. And so we see it a lot where creatives and artists, they feel like branding themselves means like death to their creativity in a
Yes.
sense.
Yeah.
And it's really the opposite. So I also, as I said, I also work with founders. So founders of, let's just say, a beauty brand or a fashion brand, they don't usually categorize themselves as an artist or a creative.
Right.
However, it depends. For me, the way I like to view the brands that we do partner with and work with, I'm not looking at what service, what product, what you provide.
Totally
I am
different things.
looking at how you approach your business. So you could have a beauty or a skincare brand and still be an artist or creative because of how you approach your service or product. It's the same way with artists and creatives. Just because your work and your product is inherently creative, it's an expression of yourself, does not mean that you cannot also be a founder of an artistic or creative business, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot of times we just tend to separate the two and we don't think that we can be more than one without killing off the other. And so when we start talking about branding and the logos and the color palettes and things like that, it always cracks me up because it's just such a narrow minded view that society has got us stuck in, that, like, well, as long as you have a color palette, you've got a logo, you have a brand. And all of those things are they are the output, right? Your logo, your photo shoot, your color palette, they're outputs of your brand. They are not the brand as a whole. Branding in itself is an infrastructure, right? It's how someone perceives you before they ever interact with your work, you yourself, whatever. It's how you become visible, and more than visible, how you become recognized. So that's how you get into these brands and these companies, or even personal brands, where you hear a name and you immediately tie it to their product, you immediately tie it to their work. It's because they have built a brand that you recognize, and that is not even typically, if you're mentioning it, you're not seeing their logo, their color palette, anything. So then how do you know what brand someone's mentioning? Because they have already created the brand recognition in their mind for you to tie their work to their brand.
And the recognition is the story.
Yeah. Yes. The brand recognition absolutely is what people are perceiving, what they know about you, what they know about your work without even having to see it. It's how people talk about your work and what you do. And so I like to just have people, from a fine artist perspective, I like to have people think about branding as a gallery, okay? Like, if you're going to put your work in a gallery, it's not necessarily about the work itself. It's about how is the work displayed. You're not going to take, this beautiful painting and put it next to a dumpster. I mean, that could be a creative direction, right?
Right,
It could hit a certain market. It could hit a certain market, but typically you want to make sure it's displayed correctly. Your branding is the same. It's how you are displaying your work to the world, how you are displaying your artistry, your creativity to the world. It's like the room that you're putting it in, versus it being something that will kill your artistry or creativity by making you more corporate.
Right. So, I mean, in essence, just to make sure that I'm getting it clear, and the audience is, there are two things that I'm hearing. One is that the logo, let's call them accessories for right now.
Yeah.
The accessories can often be band-aids, but if you have like an empty vessel,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what it is. When I think about Nike, I think about athletes. I think about the celebrities that they've included in campaigns. I think about like their mission of like some of their recycled like garments and shoes and that are made of plastic or whatever it is, right? I think about all of that, not just the Nike symbol, because what you had mentioned in terms of brand recognition, I'm looking at those athletes and those commercials, and then I'm looking at the logo at the end, maybe something like that. So I think that, and I did something, when I was first starting out, my first brand name, I thought I had to have a brand name, and later on I was like, my sister was like, no, you're doing all these things under this umbrella. Why don't you just have it be your name? Right. That clarified a lot of things for me. My first brand name was Meraki NYC. And it was like, to me, it was like, yes, I have to have another, like an alter ego name, and I have to have this logo. And then I thought that was like the shit. I was like, oh my God, I'm legit. Like this, I got the font down, and like, had my website and all that stuff. And obviously in my immature sort of ways, there was maybe what I thought was cohesion, you know what I mean? And I look today and I'm like, oh, what a fucking mess. But I was like, legit, I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then but like my fine art was always slightly separate.
Mm-hmm.
Like the products I was like making these leather goods and these wallets and certain more on the craft maker side of things.
Yeah.
It's funny to like think about when I first started being a full-time artist, how I really did separate those things, because I was like, no, having a brand means you have a product, like a shoe. And I was like I could specify like what the products were, to me, a painting. And I think a lot of people listening will resonate with this. Like, a painting is not a product. It's like an emotional exchange, right? When we're transferring money for this, and branding does align with that same kind of motto.
Yeah.
emotional exchange. So we kind of talked a little bit about the misconceptions and challenges of how people, think about the word brand. And like some people, like, they're like, oh God, it's like nails on a blackboard. And then others are just not as educated on what that looks like and how it manifests itself. So if I had asked you, what could I do to leverage the idea of branding
Mhm.
in my fine arts business? I'm a painter or a collage artist, to elevate my level of professionalism without going into that realm of ick. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what are some examples of things I could do to like elevate my shit so that I could charge more, or I could be looked at as a more reputable,
Mhm.
artist?
Yeah. So I want to touch on, just so they have like just a really quick, simple definition. So branding is a system of perception. Okay. So it's how your work introduces itself, builds
Ooh.
memory, and also will create context for their audience. So just so that we can kind of sum up everything that we just said,
Mhm.
it's so branding is just a system of perception. It's how you're perceived by people who are not familiar yet with your business, with your work, with how you do your work, what's behind it, what's behind your craft, and things like that. So, when it comes to really leveraging it, so as I said, a lot of artists and creatives, they think that they have to strip their voice or shift their work to fit the market, right? Like they're like, okay, if I'm going to become a brand, then I need to show up more professionally. Like I need to show up a little bit cleaner, a little bit, shift the way I speak about my work or whatever. And that is could not be further from the truth. I have said many, many, many times, and this goes again across industries, but right now in the world, there is a market to make money from any kind of brand. You could have a brand that is sitting on the couch eating potato chips, giving hot takes on video, and you would make money from it.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
the perception that you have to strip your voice or strip your authenticity, the rawness that comes from your work and your craft in order to be a brand, could not be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Your branding is, let's just say, like your framing device that will let the audience step into your world that your work is creating. So with that being said, to your point you made a moment ago about, I had these products, but I was thinking, oh, this isn't a product, like it's not a shoe line, it's not a beauty
Yeah,
line.
limiting. It felt limiting. I think that's what, yeah.
Yeah. So to that point, getting to the space where your work is it's a product, regardless if it's a painting, regardless if it is to your point, leather goods, wallets, whatever, it does not matter. If you are crafting something that you want people's eyes on, that you want to then exchange for monetary value, you have a product. It is about how you place that product in the world that is going to get people's attention. So, just like the basics that I usually like to start with outside of color palette, logo, all of the
Yeah.
basic things that people think about is to have a set home for people to come to view your work, read more about you, read more about your work. And oftentimes this could be a full-fledged website. It could be a full website. However, what I like to tell people who probably they don't have as much work to fill out a full website, they haven't been in business that long, but they want to be taken seriously.
Yes.
It might be something where they started out as a hobby, but now they want it to be their main source of
Like first
income.
maybe like
Yep. So I want them to at least have a landing page. Like you should at least have at minimum a URL domain link to send someone to go find your product, your work, even if it's one paragraph to read more about you, your journey, the journey into your pieces, all of those things, even if it's a one-page landing page where they can shop, read, and get the info they need, you will 10 times the amount of pieces that you sell versus not having it at all.
yeah.
And I think that's another place that people get is they think that because it's like all or nothing, right? They think that because they are in a place to do branding, website, photo shoot, all the things, full site set up, they don't start at all. Start somewhere, because if you, like I said, if you start with one page, the sales, the interest, the brand recognition will start being built to where you can then set goals for yourself to move towards something bigger if you so choose. But people really look for that trust factor, and that trust factor is going to be built on having things that look professional, they look clean, they're easy for them to find, it's easy for them to navigate, and it feels more professional than saying, "Hey, DM me for this piece."
That's a lot of work. And I
Yeah,
keep
a lot of people aren't going to do the work to do that today.
No, I keep saying that. And I don't, to be honest, like, yeah, I do see, I'm in the coaching industry, right? Like, I do see everyone who's like, DM me for the link, and they have like their many chat app, and
Mhm.
it's all automated. And I think it's great. That's one way, to do things. I think that you still need those basic, like, components to your business. Those people have that. Those people have that sort of like reputation already. You can go to their website, but I think that the DM stuff should be strictly for very specific one-off
Yes.
situations. I also want to say that what you mentioned with like, professionalism and, a one-stop shop place for people to learn about you. It's also like, it sounds like it's used as an organizational tool as well,
Mhm.
right? So for you
Yep.
to compartmentalize, when you said that, there are people who like never start because it feels very cumbersome. I mean, those are definitely the people those are my clients
Yeah.
usually. And there's two ends of that spectrum. There's people who have their shit everywhere on different platforms. They're still on multiple platforms and they haven't touched them in a while. And they're just like, I can't.
Yeah.
And then there's other people who don't even have an Instagram shop open.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, and then there's some people in the middle who has sort of a website that's coasting. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's keep them afloat. It's got the basics. Maybe it's just for the portfolio. Maybe
Yeah.
but it's like the shop page is just like non-existent sometimes.
Mhm.
And that's where the whole I think it's lazy selling, is the DM me and then
Yeah.
Venmo me, whatever. Like that shit does not fly anymore.
Yeah. It doesn't. It
We're
does.
like, and even after the pandemic of like everyone just doing all of their online shopping, everything is the virtual world. I actually think that there's more competition for how good shit should look.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. There absolutely is right now, because people are, again, it goes back to like the know, like, trust, but also if somebody feels like, with the digital age, right, there also comes a lot of scams. There also
Yeah.
comes a lot of people that are putting things out there, and a lot of times those people are doing it the easy way because they are just wanting things as quick as possible. So if somebody comes across an artist that has an established brand, or even a one-page website or a shop or something simple, versus someone who's like, yeah, DM me for this piece, here's my Cash App, send me the money, I'll ship it to you, they're going to immediately stop in their tracks and get kind of, even if it's somebody who's genuinely doing good business, it's like they are going to get red flags from it, and they're going to go with this provider here because it immediately comes across more like you can trust it more, you can build on it more, you can really dive into this brand, know how they work, who the person is, all of the things. I like to tell people, if you're going to use your direct messages, like if you want people to direct message you about a piece, to talk about the story behind the piece, right? Say, hey, are you like, this is a new piece in our shop, let's talk about this piece. Let's talk about the work that went into this piece. Let's talk about the story and the emotion behind it. DM me. That's fine to use your DMs to build community.
Yes.
But if you are trying to use your DMs, again, just for selling,
It's a hit or miss. It's
in
hit or miss.
today's world, people are looking for more. They're pushing small businesses, artists, creatives, any of that. They are pushing you to a higher standard. Their expectations are more. And if you don't rise to meet them, there are so many other businesses, artists, creatives out there that they will go to one that makes
In
them feel
heartbeat.
comfortable.
I
Yeah.
mean, and I feel that way from start to finish. I'm probably the hardest customer to deal with, and self-professed difficult customer. It's only difficult. I'm only difficult when the bells and whistles are not rolled out for me regarding whether it's a $5 pair of earrings
Mhm.
or a $5,000 pair of earrings, right? I still want the packaging to be like still still intact.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want there to be a bow on it. I want
Yeah.
a special
Mhm.
letter. I
Mhm.
want, like I want all of those things. And I think even more so from the small business standpoint, like, okay, is this person for real? Are they fucking me around? Is this like a drug deal? Or is
Yeah.
this like,
Yeah.
no, but
Mhm.
it's true. Like, I mean, there are a
Yeah.
lot of people who have turned, it made me think about the cannabis industry. And like, I'm in Brooklyn, right? So you'll find like a weed shop on every single block or a dispensary on every single block. But, it depends. Like, do you still have someone you trust and you go to and it's like easy and simple? Or do you want like legitimacy? Do you want like a store and then with knowledge, and you want like a certain strain? I mean, it's totally different experiences, but that is to some level the things that you're competing with brand wise, they are there to serve. Like, I mean, I roll out the red carpet for my clients, and I'm always, every year, if I'm going to give myself a raise,
Mhm.
then I'm always thinking about ways to then elevate that red carpet for my clients. You
Right.
know what I mean? I want them to remember how I brought them into my world, like from day one. So I would love to know, like, what is the process for, I guess, branding to come alive? Yes, we have those, like the accessories and the output components that you were talking about. But I know that I've only worked with one or two designers and I had to fill out a questionnaire. And like, what would you want to know if I were to hire you to like design? Let's just say, well, I know that you have this creative house and you have like packages that are very robust and then
Mhm.
packages that are like kind of on the baseline things.
Yeah.
What I'm in my first 5 years of being an artist, what
Mhm.
would you suggest I start with? So if you think that the website is a very strong, like sort of humble component,
Mhm.
that's, like an arm on my business, then what do I do? Do I
Yeah.
do I need a logo? Do I like
Yeah. You do need those things. While they are, I kind of laugh at them because people have gotten in their head that's what a brand is and they stop there. While you need those things, they are absolutely necessary. Like a lot of people get in their head that branding is a one-time event. Right? They think, oh, if I have the logo, the color palette, and photos, like I have a brand, I'm good
good?
to go.
I
They
felt
think
that way.
they're good. They're
I
yeah,
made labels, I
yeah,
made a business card, and I
yeah.
just shoved it on everything. And then I was like, no one even understands what the
They don't know what this is. Yeah.
fuck.
And so people think like it's a one time event and they stop building. They receive their deliverables from a designer and they're
Yes.
like, cool, my brand's done. Move on.
Have you
It's,
seen people do that?
yes, they do. I've seen a lot of people
Like they
get
hire
their
you and then
project assets and then they will launch it. They get a lot of hype around their launch because people are interested in what you're doing and they want to see the new things. But then after that, it's like right back to business as usual. They are right back to visuals or a presence or communicating with their audience or showing up in the world in the same way they did prior. And it's like you are actually tainting the brand that you just set the foundation for to build
yeah,
off of. you're
yeah,
you're walking it back. So a lot of people think that again it's a one-time thing, but it's not. It's a system. Like rebrands fail because people think that it's just a style instead of a system. They think it's just the visuals.
yeah,
It's not how I'm communicating to my audience. It's not how I'm showing up in stories or how I'm selling my product outside of the visuals. How am I speaking about my work? How am I putting my work out there? How am I getting people into a space? Again, what you're talking about, your packaging, your presence, your delivery, all
yeah,
of these things are part of the brand system. And so I just really like to tell people that branding is like it would be like trying to take a picture through a camera that didn't have a lens. Like
yeah,
you have to have clarity, you have to have direction outside of the design and outside of the visuals. And that's where I love to talk to artists and creatives about the heart behind their work
yeah,
because people are buying from you. They're buying your pieces because of you and who you are and the story behind your work. So, branding yourself to create more of an experience for them to buy those things doesn't mean ditching who you are or the heart behind it. The heart behind it actually becomes your brand.
Yes.
Right? So the brand itself is not just your logos and visuals. The brand
Right.
itself is how you expand on it past that. The brand is going to be, what type of feeling do people get when they encounter your work? What kind of language and verbiage are they used to your brand using versus someone else? Do you have more of like a friendly communication tone, or do you have more of like a Gen Z
Yeah.
millennial one? Like, are you more luxury? Are you more like down to earth and kind of, let's hang out, let's be friends? Like, how though even something as similar as like simple as a tone of voice is important. So to your point of questionnaires, a couple questions I really love to ask my clients that are a little bit different than what they would find on most brand questionnaires. It really dives though deep into their subconscious and makes them think about their brand long term. So what I usually like to tell people is, if your brand had a theme song, what would it be?
Ooh.
And that will give me the context to be
Yes.
able to say, this is how they want their brand to feel. When people interact with it, they want it to feel like this. Another one that I have is, if your brand were an animal, what would it be? So that gives you an overall picture of like, how would the brand act? Is it going to be more powerful and kind of mysterious? Is it going to be more fun and outgoing? Is it going to be vibrant? Is it going to have kind of a little bit like loner personality? Is it going to be one that operates in community? It speaks a lot to the personality behind the brand.
That's a great question.
Yeah. And then the other one that I really love is, if they had a storefront. To your point of, if you had a storefront, what would it look like? What would it smell like? What would it sound like? So when people walk in, what is the experience they need to get? All of these things give me an answer to then translate that into visuals. But it starts with the feeling. It starts with the emotion. It starts with the foundation and the tone that you want to set. And so we have to start there before we can ever get to visuals.
Yeah.
And then after
No matter
visuals,
what the colors are, I mean, like at that, if we're talking about that, I mean, that's such an important point. Those questions are great examples of the breaking down the stereotype that a brand is just those stamps of approval. The episode is over.
yeah, done right now.
Brought it in. I mean,
Yeah.
that's even for me, that makes complete sense. And I'm someone who's been working on my branding a long time. I hired 2 designers who just totally, it just failed on its face completely, and had to fire both of them actually. And it was so off base. I look like a librarian in one of the, sort of the proofs or whatever you call it. And I was like, dude, have you looked at my Pinterest board? It's fucking full of jaguars and cheetahs and
Yeah.
crazy ass bitches. Like, I am not a librarian who's sitting on a beach who's really
Yeah.
at all. And it's like miss the mark. And I also think that, you have to do your research, obviously, and which I did. It was a referral, but sometimes people miss the mark, and in being sure to communicate. And those questions are very good probing questions. Like, I feel like you cannot get around those questions for that. Like, you have to be like, they're like yes or no questions.
It forces them to stop and think. A lot of my clients are like, I have never thought about this. Like, it forces them to sit for a moment and think about your brand, even because you don't realize, even as the owner, you don't realize how easy it is to get stuck in just the business mindset, that you're not thinking that deeply about your why or how you want it to come across. Yeah. And so people get up there, and then when you ask them that, they're like, whoa, hold on a minute. Let me really think. And so to that point, like, you have to start with the foundation. The visuals come next. But then after the visuals, you return back to the foundation. A lot of people get stuck in the middle. They get stuck there at the visuals and think this is where it ends. But you have to go back to the foundation and then say, okay, We're starting here. Now let's take that and push it into every touch point that it could be pushed. Let's push it into packaging. Let's push it into thank you
Yes.
cards. Let's push it into my social content, my stories, to that example I gave a moment ago about when you launch a new piece and on your one-page website saying, hey, this piece is now live to shop. Let's break down the thought process and the emotion behind the piece. That's going to immediately make people feel emotionally tied to your product and sell more of it just off the gate because they understand the story behind it.
Link in the bio. I mean, I'm gonna be intrigued. If someone spent that much time describing it to me, again, like the actual like physical effort
Mm-hmm.
that I think people put into it. And
Yeah.
I think that it's like I hate to be this like, kind of like tough love mom, but it's like time to cut the bullshit out about the fear and about the hesitation and about, well, I'm confused, but like you can't rest on confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Nope.
that shit doesn't get you anywhere. So
Yeah.
the other person is gonna maybe they're gonna create a shitty logo, but they're still gonna be zooming past your ass.
Yes.
Like
Correct.
that's
Absolutely.
I think that so I do a lot of Instagram audits,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it's just it's to make sure that everything is aligned, cohesive, and not super chaotic.
Yeah.
But from a branding perspective, what are things that you look at on social media that you think make for a good fucking looking brand that you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I like, this like I would maybe hire them or I would buy from them or whatever. Let's
Yeah.
see if we can like break it down for our listeners, just like a couple of things that they can do
Yeah.
to like separate themselves apart. What do they need to do today or what can they do today if they I mean, listen, hiring creative houses like yours, they're very big investments.
Yeah.
Hiring coaches like me is a big investment because it's the personalized, customized aspect, right? I could go get a pair of sneakers or I could go get a customized pair of sneakers. And right. So if they're not hiring us today. What can they do?
Yeah. So the first thing is that I usually look for is a website. 8% of the time, I'm going to go to their Instagram, and the first thing I'm going to do is look at what's in their bio.
Yes.
So you need to have a really good descriptive bio, more than I like to paint, or these are my paintings. Like, you need to say, I paint things. I get just a really brief one, but I paint things for, with this emotion, or I paint things for people who are burnt out and needing a reset from our current like market. Like I'm giving people a place to rest through my work. When they experience my work, they're coming here to bring peace, right? And so you want a very descriptive bio to where they know, oh, okay, this is the vibe I'm going to get here, because typically they're going to read that first. If they're interested in your bio, then they'll go down to your content. Typically, they're not going to go down to your content if they read your bio and they don't understand it, or they're like, oh, this is probably not for me.
Right.
So once they do that and then they go down into your content, you want to make sure that you're delivering more in your content than just the deliverable. Like, you want to, like, a lot of things. I work with a lot of photographers, from wedding to commercial to beauty and fashion to editorial and journalism. I work with a lot of them, and all of their markets are very different. But some place that photographers often get stuck is thinking that just posting the photo does the work for them. Like, let me just post the photo on social media and it's on my feed and that's going to drive sales. It's not. People, high paying clients,
That's
okay?
interesting for photographers even.
Yes, high paying clients, they're not just buying deliverables anymore. They're not just saying, like, oh, this is a great product, let me buy it. They are buying into alignment with them. They are buying into the identity, and they're buying into the vision. Okay, if you do not have things throughout your content that is speaking to the vision behind your work, the reasons why, what's going into it. I love, behind the scenes. Start having photos or videos that you're recording of yourself creating these pieces. You're already creating them. Set a camera up and record yourself. People will buy into that time and time and time again. And that's just one example. You can then get into, from the stories post, you can turn that into a carousel post. post it to your feed so that it stays there for a while, and whoever comes to your page can read about this specific piece and the story behind it. That is why they will start falling in love with you over the artist next door, right? They're going to fall in love with you and your craft because of your mind, because of the heart behind it versus someone else. So I like to tell people, make sure that every touch point is communicating the same thing. You need to make sure that your content is communicating the same thing your stories are, that your stories are communicating the same thing your bio is, that your bio is communicating the same thing whatever link you have in your bio is. Anything that you point out needs to have the same feel, the same tone of voice, the same heart as everything else, because that is the heart of your brand. If you have content that is, let's say, really luxury, you have really luxurious content and people can go to your feed and be like, wow, that's a curated, beautiful feed.
Yes.
But then they go to your stories, and your stories, you're showing up in sweatpants and messy hair. They're going to be like, this is really disconnected from the feeling I just got on their grid.
Like,
And
you
then
don't wear a suit all day?
and then they go to your bio and there's nothing there, and they're like, oh, okay,
Is
I'm
she
now confused
Yeah.
because is this who they really are, or is their content who they really are? They're going to immediately think one of the two is not the truth. So, and if you are in sweatpants and messy hair every day, that is fine. Start posting content to show the mess. Show your desk that has your paintbrushes, your sketches, your things, and say, this is what we're working on this week, with a post that has your stuff scattered about. Have pieces of yourself throughout all touch points so that it's the same. It doesn't matter what the message is behind it. It just matters that they're cohesive.
Would you have people, let's just say that my feed looks crazy.
Mhm.
There's no like synchronicity. There's no like, everything is kind of like, some are posts, some should be stories, some should be reels. You know what I mean? Like, cause I sort through all this stuff and I'm like, you got to archive this, you got to archive that.
Yeah.
And it can still look like it's almost like 5 Instagrams in one sometimes. Do you think that people should start to think about some of the colors that they consistently are using in paintings or sculptures, or the photography that they're looking at? I mean, because I think that there's this fight again, like, well, I don't want everything to be stale. I want my art to like be the thing, the star of the show, but at the same time, there is cohesion in their work.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's about the way they're displaying it. So I'm like, what can I tell my client who is not understanding how to post? Do what they do everything in a template, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start for sure, is, starting to kind of recognize the patterns in what you're posting, what you're talking about in your work, and then kind of stick to them. A big thing is that people think if they haven't had branding professionally done, that they can't, that it's like a free for all. They don't have any fonts to stick to, they don't have any colors to stick to, they can just post whatever. If you start to notice the patterns, start to try and stick to those colors. You can then go and choose a set of 2 or 3 fonts that you like, that you stick to, that are legible, they're clean, they're easy to read, and just stick to those. You would be surprised how far choosing a couple fonts and a couple colors to stick to will go. For people think, even if it's not like, oh, they have professional branding, it will still look more clean and cohesive and put together. And so I think, even if you don't notice the patterns, putting thought into what are 4 colors, stick to 4. Like if I do a mini brand for somebody, we usually do 4 colors instead of 6. Do 4 colors and stick to them. Hold yourself to them, and it kind of goes into, again, the heart behind the work. You're almost doing your work and your pieces and your audience a disservice to just post the work and say, this is it. This is the finished product. Here it is.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, that's great. But yourself, there was a lot of blood, sweat, tears, thought, emotion, rawness, all of that went into creating that piece. That your brand is the same way. When you have it done with a designer, it is the finished product where it's like, here's my brand, great. While that looks good and it does play a part, there is still so many small details that go into not just creating it, but sustaining it on the
Yes.
back end. And that's not even just for people who have never had branding done. That is for clients who have paid high ticket money to have branding done and then walk away and don't sustain it. It
What's high ticket? What is, let's talk about money for a second. What does this type of work cost?
um
Low end to high
Yeah,
end.
so low end about 5,000. Low end, if you're going to be doing high end, I have a client right now who is signed on for 15,000. Now, there's a lot of things that go into those price points and everything in between. I have a lot of clients who typically land about the 7 to 8 mark. So you have like a low, a middle, a high, but even our prices, pricing, especially even in the design industry, is very subjective, and I try to keep our prices as relatable as possible because I want branding to be attainable for small
Yes.
businesses. That's
Yes.
why I started my business. I'm not in it to make myself so inaccessible to small businesses that I am only attracting like high-end corporate businesses,
Yeah.
because that's not what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate and specialize in serving artists, creatives, founders. Those people typically are going to need a more accessible option to be able to brand their business and scale it and grow it.
What's like a starter pack?
So for for just like a mini brand that we usually do,
Yeah.
I usually have people start with branding. So you would get your logos, your color palette, your type suite, all of that. And then we usually we plan their photo shoot with them. So we have you curate visuals. So this would be a mini pack for somebody who, let's say, they're not in a place they need a website. We
Yeah.
actually
I'm
just
starting. I need to get my shit together.
Mhm. Yep, you don't need a website. You don't necessarily have anything to sell yet, or you don't have enough to fill out a website. We actually just had a client launch with this. She's an esthetician though, but she did not have a need for like a booking site. So we did her entire brand. We did the creative direction for her photo shoot and her overall brand presence. And if you looked at just her social presence
Yeah.
from before to now, it
Wow.
is night and day different. It
Yeah.
is insane. And it just goes to show how small tweaks can make the biggest difference. You do not have to be doing all of it all at once. And you can
Great point.
you
That's
can
a good
take it down a little bit further and not do the photo shoot. You could just do branding and then move forward with that. Start there, see how that affects your business, and then do the photo shoot next so that you have curated visuals. Do them in pieces. I don't necessarily suggest people start there, but it is a starting place
Yeah.
that will get you further than not starting at all.
Would you then like talking about the flow of things? Okay, I'm in year 5, year 4. I want to do a website overhaul. Would that be the natural progression to go
Yeah.
in?
Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, you could do obviously more creative direction, packaging, all the extras, and kind of like pushing the level of I guess client appreciation, client services, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we actually have a retainer style service for our clients. So once they go through a rebrand with us, we
Yeah.
offer them more long-term support, to the point of we know that a brand requires sustaining. So most of the time, you're going to want to be focused on what you're good at, right? You're going to want to be focused on creating the pieces, creating the products, doing what you love. You're not going to want to put all of the time, effort, and energy into social content creation, to business cards, or into different times of the year when you have like Black Friday sales, end of year sales, when you're trying to push out thank you cards for people who have bought pieces from you all year long, when you're trying to really just create the different touch points of your brand. So we actually have a retainer service for people that want to stay in our orbit, that we can help you then build that presence and do that. So, it would go branding, your imagery, your website. And then after that is when you start getting into like your marketing assets, your tangible print
Mhm.
materials, your flyers, all your client experience materials, any emails that you might send out, any of that stuff is
Well,
where all of that starts coming in on the back end past a website.
yeah.
So it expands even further than that, but that's typically like your natural progression is branding, photo shoot, website, and then you start getting into the longevity of your business and the assets you need that keep it running on a day-to-day basis.
Oh my God, so exciting. I
Yeah.
love this shit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's why I'm like a very like I'm a type A artist.
Yeah.
And that's rare, but I do think that you have to have some type A in order to be an artist in business because you'll hate
Mhm.
the business side and you'll resent it and you'll hate all the shit that we're talking about right now.
Yes.
So I think with this episode, my goal was to kind of break those myths and demystify this process of like pulling it all together to strengthen, to charge more, to bring people in who will come back over and over and over again. So if people are listening right now and want to hire you, where do they go? What do they do? And I'll have all the notes in the bottom on in the captions. Obviously Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, they can find us on Instagram. Our handle is Sainte Noire, SainteNoire. And then our website is saintenoire.co. We're Instagram, our website, we're on Threads,
A
Substack.
beautiful website. You guys have a beautiful website.
Thank you. Yeah. We are across a lot of different channels because I do provide a lot of free education. Very similar to this, I talk a lot about breaking things down so that people understand really what's behind it because, at the end of the day, like the brand is built through clarity and structure. And like to your point, I want people to reframe again, hating the business side of it and hating the like stiffiness. Think of it as an expansion of what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Think about it as an extension of your heart, of your work, of yourself. And then it becomes fun, right? Then it becomes like, oh my gosh, I get to have my own website that can have literally whatever vibe I want it to that would go with my work. Then it becomes really, really fun when you realize you get to choose how you show up. And that's what I challenge people to do across content. So, they can definitely find us there. All of our inquiries go through our website. You can find any package information about hiring us there. And then we actually do have a private podcast as well called The Artist Shift, where we give a lot of tangible tips and things that they can actually work through and implement in their business without hiring us.
How many
So,
people are on your team?
the team is another thing I do a little bit different than other businesses. So I don't have people set on my team every month. I like to hire creatives based on the project and the client. So I have kind of what a directory. Like let's say like I have like a creatives directory of people that I have worked with, that I trust, that I know, and I will pull from them for the project for whoever I know will do the best work for that client or for that project. And so we have a really thorough list of people that we trust, from designers to copywriters to photographers or videographers, people to work in all touch points of your business.
Oh my God, that's great. I like even more customized. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really smart. That's a really smart way to do things. I mean, yeah, I've definitely seen other, whether they're coaches or whatever, and they have teams of three, and
Mhm.
everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And I
Yeah.
think that that's definitely a different side of things, but it's such creative work that I can't imagine, a lawyer coming over to you and maybe continuing to use the same artists. You know what I mean?
I actually do have a lawyer that we work with, and we have lawyers, we have interior designers, we we have all kind of people, but I do like to make sure that whatever the brand direction is, then I have a designer that is going to do well in that area because
Yeah.
not everybody can design for every industry or does well. Even if they can design for every industry, they have one they might do better in. And so I really like doing that because it allows us to be able to work with a lot of different creatives as well and build
Yeah.
relationships that way.
It's very intriguing. That's a very intriguing way, especially as an artist. Like
Mm.
I get that. Like I wouldn't just
Yeah.
hire like anyone. And that
Yeah.
would even be like, okay, yes, she's gonna vet these people
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
see if they can like read me. You know what I mean? So that's really cool. That's a great way. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I appreciate you taking the time to sit on my couch.
Of course.
And we'll have to do a episode number 2,
Yeah.
another version of this to dive a little bit deeper. But
Of course.
um To whoever's listening, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Terry Talks, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another unfiltered episode of Terry Talks. I've also got some free resources on my website that'll help make your life a lot easier as an artist in business. You can also check out my services or apply to work together. Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and sign up for my newsletter for more art industry information. See you on the gram.